Member Bagley,
Present.
Chair Primo,
Present.
Member McClintock,
Here.
Member Johnson.
Here.
And it looks like absent, we have members Madrid, members Jenna, and one more. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. I'm sorry, the reason why I was blanking. Tom Martin had to resign from the board, and that's why he's not on my list. Thank you.
Thank you. First, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting from November 2018?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And we'll vote. Did everybody vote? Thank you.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. So first, I would like to ask if the public has any comments regarding any general business not on the evening's agenda. Okay. Then we will move on to this evening's hearing. We are here for BOA Resolution 02-209, case number VAR 19-0001, a variance from the minimum off-street parking requirements at 5609 South Curtis Street, from 12 spaces required to 11 spaces proposed. And would staff like to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Would you let me know when you can see the presentation in front of you there?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So my name is Rob Haig. I'm a planner with the Community Development Department. I'll be making the presentation on the behalf of staff. As you mentioned, this is the Curtis Street Townhomes Parking Variance application. The requested council action is a variance from the provision of the code in section 10-4-9A4A, which requires 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit in 1, 2, and 3 family dwellings. The subject property is encumbered by public sanitary easement as well as a storm sewer easement as requested by an SDP that is currently in process. This is the circumstance under which the applicant is claiming that the hardship is made. So just an overview of the presentation and what we're going to go through this evening. The process, I'll cover some of the recent history of the property and of the current ongoing applications, talk about the application details as submitted by the applicant in their variance request. We'll look at the review criteria for a variance and staff's analysis. Staff will present a recommendation, and then the board actions will be presented. We also have the applicant here who has a few items to show as well, and so they would like to speak after staff's presentation. So the process, as I mentioned before, there's an ongoing site development plan, SDP 18-0019. This is currently under review with staff. The application is pending resubmittal from the applicant. Upon staff's first round of review, we found that there were conflicts with one of the storm sewer easements that we'll look at in just a moment, as well as some of the other more technical aspects that are reviewed during a site development plan process. So once this variance is resolved, the applicant will have more direction, and the board's decision will be made tonight unless continued. Following the board's decision, the applicant would resubmit that site development plan based on the outcome of this meeting and would continue that review by staff. Following that approval of the SDP, a building permit submittal would be required to construct any of the physical improvements on the site. So this is a vicinity map. So the image on the right shows the subject property and the aerial overlaid with the zoning districts. Property is zoned CA, added to this slide from what was on the packet originally to include the image on the left-hand side of the screen, which does include the nearby sewer and infrastructure. So the green line that bisects the property from north to south, along with the remainder of the properties along Curtis in this block, is the existing sanitary sewer. The sewer has existed since approximately 1917. There is no formal written easement on the property. However, having existed for so long, it is permitted to be there, and there is some prescriptive nature to its continued existence. Through the site development plan process, staff is requesting that the applicant provide a 20-foot easement, so 10 feet on either side of the center line of that sewer, in order to accommodate maintenance that might be required for that sewer now or into the future. Additionally, which is a little bit more difficult to see, on the south property line, there's a purple line. It might be actually easier to see. There's a yellow or orange circle kind of just west of the green line on the south property line, and the purple square in the right-of-way. So this, in approximately between those 2 points, is a storm sewer that exists on the property. The applicant is currently in the process of working with staff to relocate or maintain, figure out the condition of that storm sewer, and also as part of the SDP, a 20-foot easement is being requested and required on 10 feet on either side of that center line as well. So those 2 easements, shown here, the existing sanitary easement running north-south, that's the existing location of the line. The applicant is not, and staff are not proposing any changes to the location of that line. In orange shade is the proposed easement, the required easement from staff, from the city. The storm sewer that runs east to west falls to the west from the east, so from Curtis down towards the lower ends of the property down the west. This configuration is not the current configuration of the line. This is the proposed configuration that is currently still in consideration between the applicant and staff. So in blue is the first unit, building 1, as it's known on the site development plan. So this building includes 5 dwelling units. So any dwelling, multifamily dwelling that includes 4 or more units is required to be parked at 1.5 spaces per unit. For dwelling units that contain 1, 2, or 3 dwelling units, such as the green blocks on the west hand or the western end of the property, this is proposed building 2. 2 spaces per dwelling unit are proposed or are required for a multifamily dwelling with just 2 units, as shown here. So the applicant is requesting the variance that the application of that parking requirement on building number 2 be reduced to align with the parking requirement of building number 1. Their assertion is that the sanitary sewer line forces them to separate these buildings, and then because of that forced separation, they are unable to supply parking. While staff doesn't understand that this is a constrained lot, and that these considerations and this circumstance is somewhat unusual, the sewer easement and the sanitary and storm sewer easements do not prevent the applicant from providing adequate parking. Additionally, this hardship is somewhat self-imposed because of the amount of development being proposed on this site. The minimum amount of unobstructed open space is 20%. While this application hasn't been reviewed for that standard, that also might be an obstacle that the applicant is coming across when supplying parking. The easements you could provide parking in the easement. In fact, there's an area just south of the building number 2 that's 10 by 20, which would fit a parking space. This is not a proposed location for parking by staff. This is just to demonstrate that there are other options that would help overcome the requested hardship or the stated hardship by the applicant. So the review criteria, in the very first introductory kind of paragraph of the variance criteria, it talks about that there must be exceptional or extraordinary circumstance, and that there, through the provision or through the literal interpretation of a provision of the code, creates an unnecessary hardship on the property. Staff does understand that this is a somewhat unique circumstance with these 2 easements on a very narrow property. However, the code provision is not, or the easements don't prevent the code provision from being met. It would not authorize any use that is not otherwise permitted in CA. This is all multifamily residential. That's a permitted use. Would not alter the essential character, the density and height and other things in the proposal, which technically are not a portion of this variance, are all in line. And the if parking was reduced, staff found that it would not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. That it would be the minimum relief, it would be the minimum that would afford relief from the stated hardship. Staff is not sure that this is the case. The request is for a reduction in parking when there could be other configurations of the building in order to accommodate this parking. The amount of units on site also leads to this, the difficulty in providing parking. Additionally, there might be other provisions of the code that the applicant is struggling with that prevent them from providing parking. For example, open space might be the difficulty. And this is shown by that previous slide where there is available space on the ground. The variance, if approved, would not adversely affect public health, safety, and welfare. Staff finds that there's no conflict with the standard. However, due to the increasing pressure on parking downtown, staff thinks that this is something to be carefully considered. However, could not draw the direct link that would find that this standard not be met. So we ultimately found that it was approved, but that it deserves consideration. Additionally, the hardship is not self-imposed. As I've mentioned previously, the hardship is a result of the easements, but also the amount of density proposed on site, basically maximizing the site. It's a fairly small lot, and to put 7 dwelling units on this would be difficult in any circumstance, regardless of these lots and how these are typically configured. So staff's recommendation is for denial of the variance, again, for the reasons I stated previously. The board's actions that could be taken tonight would be to approve with any reasonable conditions, denial, or continue to a date certain. And thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions or return to any slides if you would like.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. My assumption is that the storm sewer easement on the southern part of the property, or the storm sewer, actually exists today.
I'll let Anastasia who's here representing Public Works.
Anastasia Urban, Development Services Manager with the Department of Public Works. That is an existing storm sewer section.
It exists today.
Correct. I believe on the slide that is before you, that is a proposed realignment that they're showing, but it is a storm sewer that picks up water from Curtis and conveys it to the west.
Okay, so it does exist. Now the purple location that you pointed out, that's potential at-grade parking in the sewer easement, and that's allowed.
Surface improvements such as paving is allowed. There could be no structural components such as footings or buildings located within an easement.
Yeah, but just as a parking space that's designated, that's possible in that location.
It is based on the grading, and it'll depend on how that grading works with their proposed site plan as well. Mm-hmm. There is a significant slope that exists on the property, so it is a little unclear if that parking space could be constructed without significant retaining walls. Retaining walls would be a concern to be able to access and maintain that storm sewer, so we would need to evaluate the detailed grading proposal for that. But in general, surface paving, patios, parking can be located in an easement.
And
Okay,
remember
but
back-
that depends on the grading plan that's provided by the applicant.
That is correct. The purple is a hypothetical location where, from a plane view, the area of a parking space could be constructed there. However, we have not seen a proposed design regarding how that physically could be constructed and what the extent of grading and/or retaining walls would be required.
Right, and if I may add, I didn't mean to muddy the water by adding that demonstration up there. It was just to represent that there may be other solutions, that there is width on the property available. As Anastasia mentioned, there could be other obstacles to overcome if a parking space would be located there, how it's accessed from the rest of the parking, the retaining walls, any other significant amount of grading that might be involved. None of that has been looked at this point, and the applicant wasn't consulted in our positioning of that site there, or that location for that parking, potentially simply a demonstration to show that there are options and that there could be parking located within those easements.
Yeah, well, you defined that within the proposal that you sent us that came in the application packet. You said that there was an option that's possible that it could go there.
That's
I
correct.
visited the site today, and it would appear to me that the existing non-habitable building, storage building that's on the back where Building 2 would be, when it gets torn down, the front of that building, I mean, I didn't notice right away that there were any major grade issues, but I'm assuming that totally comes down and then the green building gets built. Thank you.
Now, you've got me curious on the contour lines about the interval of those contours. I see how close they are under Building 2. Do you have any indication how close what interval for those contour lines?
I would guess they're either 1 or 2 feet. I apologize, I don't have the full-size set of plans
I was
with
just
me.
curious.
I have a question for you. The sewer line there, can that be privately paved over?
The storm sewer,
Storm sewer, where the yellow is.
I believe that it could, but I'll let Anastasia clarify.
Sure, the storm sewer is a public storm sewer, so again, it conveys regional stormwater flows. But we would allow for the private driveway to be constructed over a public storm sewer.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
I don't know if this is a question for staff or for the applicant, but how are cars exactly accessing this property? Over the storm sewer line? Is that the driveway per se?
That's correct. So for a multifamily development such as this, there's a drive aisle width requirement, and that it aligns fairly well with the location of that storm sewer. So you can see the kind of throat of the access from Curtis on the far right-hand side of the screen there. So that would be the interest from Curtis. So that measurement, that 31-foot measurement, is in the road travelway, and they'd access straight back from there.
And those cars to access Building 1?
Yes, so they're in parking spaces at grade, and then the living areas, or most of the living areas in the houses are above on the second or third floor.
Okay, all right.
I had a question just about process where you've mentioned there might be other issues like the percent of open space. If the applicant ends up having multiple variance needs, does the applicant need to come back multiple times, or can those be packaged into a single request?
A good question. I might consult our planning manager, or excuse me.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm Mike Sutherland. I'm Deputy Community Development Director. So the request tonight was made by the applicant and was solely for a reduction in the number of total parking spaces required on the site. They certainly could come back with a new application that involved multiple variances if necessary.
Gotcha. Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I do have another question. If we're looking at this, I noticed that there is one at-grade parking space on, I guess I would call it unit number 5, which, south of unit 5, which is the most westerly of the 5 units.
That's correct.
So where are the parking spaces for the unit that's in front? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's a 5th unit, sort of the front unit. Where are they? Where's the parking for that unit?
I believe, and I apologize, so we haven't received the resubmittal with the more detailed schematics of this building and kind of how that all would work. I believe it's adjacent just to the west of the 2 parking spaces that are under the letters for, let's say, Building 1, 3-story attic. I believe there's a parking space there that stands on its own. I would let the applicant clarify if that's the proposed
Yeah, I think
plan.
that would be good.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Now we would like to invite the applicant to make their presentation. Please share your name for the record.
Definitely. Hi, I'm Rebecca Wilson. I'm with Bryant Flink Architecture and Design, and I'm the project architect on this development. I'm also here with Mark Pizzoferrato, who is the owner and developer of this site. I think the staff report and what Rob shared was really thorough in terms of background and where we are in the process, especially some of the challenges we're facing on this site. So I'll just briefly add a couple points. What you have up here right now is our original by right site plan, which includes the survey information we had at the time of the property purchase. When the property was purchased, it was unknown and undocumented that the storm line on the property functioned as the regional stormwater outlet for the area. And the associated prescriptive easement was also not known or documented in the survey or title when Mark purchased the property. The info also regarding this line as a regional stormwater plan was not publicly available to us at the time of the property purchase. We did have a pre-application meeting, and it was noted that a 20-foot easement would need to be centered around the existing storm line. So on this plan, you can see towards Curtis Street, our survey showed the beginning of the line. And then as it moves towards the sanitary easement that runs north-south, there is, it's a little hard to see, but there's a manhole where the line terminates. Our survey identified it as abandoned. We later found out it's a dry well, that the city had surveyed later on when we were in the SDP process. Additionally, I'll just also note in regards to the existing garage that's currently on the site, it was built and permitted in 2000, and it is over the storm line. And then
What year was that?
2000?
2000,
Yes,
19 years ago. Okay.
19 years ago. And then also to note here, since the topography lines are shown, there is a severe slope at the west side of the site. It's about a 25-ish foot difference from essentially where grid line 3 is, if you can see that, to the west property line. We submitted for our SDP, and the comments we received were the applicant will need to coordinate with the city on improvements or maintenance needed to the existing storm sewer system. The discharge outlet drains to the west and needs to be kept clear. The existing storm sewer system will need to be centered within a 20-foot easement. The blue area here represents this required storm sewer easement, which was required to continue through the property to the west, not just ending at the manhole. As you can see, this wipes out the lower unit of Building 2. We considered 6 units. However, there is another provision of the code which prohibits an accessory use or structure as a residential use. And so essentially wiped out both of those units. So we have been working with the city and negotiating with the south property owner to reconfigure the storm line and elbow the easement so that some burden of the storm easement is shared by the south property owner. As you can see, this allows a more significant developable area above the easement. And then here is our proposed site plan with the variance request of 3 parking stalls at Building 2 in lieu of 4. We did consider adding an unenclosed parking stall in the area to the south that was previously shown. But as mentioned, the slope there is very significant. It would require a retaining condition, and we did have explicit comments from Public Works that no structures, including footings, could be within the public easement. They did note paving and some planting is allowed. Additionally, we explored turning the duplex, rotating it so that cars would enter from the south, which is the bottom. But there's just not enough width in the lot to accommodate a garage plus the required backup space without having a retaining condition in the easement. Solutions to regrade the site because it drops off so steeply there were cost prohibitive in our opinion. And finally, just in reference to the comment that building 7 units creates a self-imposed hardship, we did want to maximize density on the site. The property was purchased by Mark with the intent to develop at its highest and best use, and it is by right to do so. As I mentioned previously, we could not do 6 units due to the use and site provision in the code. So in summary, the city's plans for a regional stormwater route to Skunk Hollow, which is the area to the south there, to the west, next to Santa Fe, was not disclosed at the time of the property purchase. All other by right requirements are observed, including height, setbacks, open space. Prior to the SDP comments, 12 stalls were accommodated on the site, which was my first exhibit. However, with the added hardship of the storm sewer easement, it is not possible to fit in the fourth stall on the duplex building due to the size of the parking stall and the slope of the site. We do understand the sensitivity to parking, especially in this area of Littleton. We would also like you to keep in mind that with the same number of units in a single multifamily building, perhaps it would even be across the street with no easements, we would be meeting the required by right parking of 11 stalls. So same number of units, same stalls proposed here. That because of the sanitary easement, we have 2 separate buildings with the additional stall required at Building 2 due to the higher parking calc at duplexes. Thank you for your consideration. That is all for me.
Are there questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have numerous questions. On the new proposal here, what is the size of the south unit in Building 2?
It's a 1-bedroom unit. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact square footage. I would estimate 1,200.
Okay. My assumption is that these are all for sale units.
That was a yes.
And can you tell me what the price range of the units are? Generally.
Mark, would you please come up to the microphone? Thanks. And introduce yourself for the record.
Hi, Mark Pizzo, Ferrado, developer. From 400,000 to possibly 700,000.
400,000 to 700,000, okay? So you're saying that your engineer did a grading plan and there's no way to get another space on to the south of the 1,200 square foot unit?
We've looked at this area west of the sanitary easement many times. We feel this is the optimal configuration, and no, we could not get an additional parking stall there without a retaining condition, which would impede into the easement.
What's the fall in 20 feet from the front of, effectively from the front of the garage, 20 feet back? How much is that falling?
From the garage, it's the whole slope there falls 25 feet, so I'd assume at that point it's about 12.
12 feet. So it's effectively almost like a walkout then, the units.
Yes.
So there's 12 feet of fall and 20 feet. That's what you just said.
You're asking the...
From the front of where the garage is, and if you extend that down to the south where the storm sewer is, the storm sewer is going to have to be down about 15 to 20 feet. It's going to have to be lowered significantly.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was talking about the slope in the other direction running east to west.
That's what I'm talking about.
Member Bagley, if I could, I'm assuming the contour lines are 1 foot. So it looks like it's about 9 or 10 feet of fall between the front of the garage, the eastern face of the garage, and 20 feet back from that, which is about in line with the western end of the garage there as well.
Yes, okay, so about 10 feet.
About 10 feet.
So that means that the sanitary sewer is going to have to be well below that. So that's going to be down 15 to 20 feet if it has to daylight 20 feet back before it goes into Skunk Hollow, right?
Yes, the storm sewer would daylight towards Skunk Hollow, and again, you know, the grading plan is still being reviewed, so we haven't seen a specific proposal to put a parking space there in order to evaluate the exact location of the storm sewer cover and parking.
Okay. I noticed in the application write-up that there was some discussion in here that the pro forma doesn't work. Well, you know, I'm sorry that your pro forma doesn't work. I don't think that that's the obligation of the city's problem if the pro forma doesn't work. And my assumption also is that you, the developer, own the property now.
Correct.
Right, you purchased it. And there was no way to find out these problems existed before you purchased the property?
I mean, we really had to go through the process to figure out if the storm sewer was even in any type of working shape. I mean, in 2000, there was a new building built directly over, you know, and assuming that was abandoned, I mean.
It was an assumption on your part that it was
Well,
abandoned and
that-
wasn't
Does
going to.
Yeah, but that building should have never been permitted. in the
I
first-
understand that. I
So
understand.
it's just,
And did you have discussions with the engineering department about the fact that there was going to be a storm sewer and it was going to have to go through, or did you not even have that conversation?
we did, I mean, yeah, we did, and really, they didn't have any documentation of the storm sewer.
Okay.
And when Roger Peterson, not that it was just not clear what was going on there, really. And never did I think that we were gonna have to take on the burden of that area and have a storm sewer go completely through the property.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I noticed that based upon the CA zoning allowing 25 units per acre, that this exactly makes 7 units to the acre on this property. I mean, it's almost exactly 7.001 or something like that. So what you did was you maxed out the number of units that you could get based upon what you thought was buildable without the storm sewer easement. I mean, that's basically what you, and is that, did you make that assumption and that was involved in the price that you paid for the subject property?
yes.
Is there any other place where you can put a parking spot on this property which modifies maybe an open space requirement? I mean, I just don't know. I mean, I'm asking that question.
We've looked at, so the front, potentially if there was a parking spot there, however, we are observing a predominant front setback of the block, and that's why the building is pulled off like that.
When I look at this diagram, I say 3 and 3 is 6, and 5 are, I guess, 5. So you're showing 11 spaces, and that's what you want, based upon this plan. It's not the plan that we got in our packet, but that's all right. Where are the spaces for I'm going to say, the more easterly unit?
The first unit,
Yeah,
that is the single garage stall, that's
just one.
three units in.
Yeah, so the fourth,
Yeah, the fourth car shown from the east.
The fourth
It's-
car. I mean, the fourth car going from east to west is for the more easterly unit? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
That one right there?
This one indicated by the cursor, yes.
Okay, so the two that are to the east of that are meant for the subject unit that's above it.
Correct.
And the one unit must be a somewhat smaller unit, maybe it's 12 to 1,500 square feet, where the more easterly car is parked in the garage. That's for that unit. So the most easterly unit has to go all the way back to the west 4 spaces. I mean, that's the way it's
Yes,
designed.
yes.
Okay. One of the big problems that I have, having been in Littleton for 25 years and noticing the changes that are occurring downtown, is to understand, I mean, that there is no visitor parking unless it's on the street, and there is all kinds of development occurring downtown, and there's a lot of commercial activity right across the street or just to the south. So parking for visitors, if anybody invites anybody to come to this project, I mean, there is no place to park. You really almost can't have people come and visit. It's almost impossible. By car. They can walk. They can park in the RTD park and ride and walk a half a mile. Okay. That's probably the extent of my questions at the moment.
Thank you, Member Bagley. I did have a question as well. About how many bedrooms are the units? Like, are these ones that show one car in the stall really just a single bedroom unit?
That's correct. They're 1 bedroom. The ones with 2 cars shown are 2 bedrooms.
Are there additional questions for the applicant?
I had a couple things to ask about. The 20% open space. Now, is that accommodated in this diagram?
It is, yes.
And that's without the proposed 4th parking spot, the purple spot?
Yes.
That we saw earlier.
Without that.
And the manhole cover that we saw, was that, when you bought the property, that was visible and obviously accessible at that point?
it was, but it was, within that purple sanitary line going north and south, so really it was thought to have been part of that sanitary line.
Okay. And you also indicated earlier that you weren't going to grade that because it was cost prohibitive for that extra parking spot? Isn't that what you said? Is the cost prohibitiveness?
We felt the grade was too steep for that to make sense. It drops off.
Economically? Or is that,
Well,
I mean, I guess it's all
but
economics.
if it was an option, at least it would be an option, but with the easement, we're not able to
I think
build
you
it.
would, if you regraded, you potentially might still have a retaining condition somewhere to meet the street.
Okay.
And about how much space is there between that property line and, say, the units where the cars will actually be able to enter the property?
From Unit 1 to Curtis Street?
No, from the property line, I guess, on the north, or on the south side to, say,
Oh.
looks like the front doors of the units.
It's about 18 feet to the pop-out sections, and at the garages, 26 feet.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
26 feet to the garage, is that what you said?
To the garage, the backup space or pull-in space.
And also, you mentioned earlier, or the staff mentioned, the site development plan is still under review. Is that true?
That's correct.
This may be a question for planning staff as well. The requirement for open space is 30% of the site must be open, but that doesn't include driveways.
That's correct. So the requirement is 20% open space. So
20%.
That's correct. So unobstructed open space includes any pedestrian ways, landscaped areas, anything basically without a building or that isn't a driveway or parking area.
So it's 20%.
That's correct.
The most easterly building in structure 1, where the access to that comes, it looks like there's some steps that come up to a
Patio.
porch.
Correct.
And the porch sort of fronts the Curtis.
That's correct.
And so what kind of landscaping or is there on the north side of the storm sewer easement? I'm going to call it Unit 1 of the 5 units. How is that going to be handled, the landscaping in that parcel?
We're proposing 2 planters on either side of that stair up to Unit 1, as well
Right.
as pedestrian paving and standalone pots, which are not shown on this diagram.
Okay. I'm thinking of the linear space that's more, I understand the front, the Curtis frontage, but I'm talking about the fairly wide component that almost looks like about the size of a potential parking space, if you can see that.
Right in front of the entrance to Unit 2?
No.
There?
The pop-out where you said it was 18 feet to the property line from the pop-out going to the east of that?
Is this the location that you're
No,
talking
no,
about?
no, no, no. Down
Down here.
right there.
Yeah, that's the entrance to Unit 2 from the sidewalk of Curtis Street, and it's a downtown Littleton design guideline that,
Okay, so
At least
that's
some.
the access
Yeah.
to Unit 2. So you come in facing to the west, and then you make a right turn and you go up some stairs. Is that what this shows?
you walk off of Curtis Street directly to the door. You can kind of see it with a swing there indicated. Right there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that's a sidewalk there.
Yes.
I guess what the thing that is some minor modifications and some changes in open space requirements. Instead of 20%, it's 18% or whatever the number might be. And the access to the second unit is altered and modified, we may be able to get the 12 spaces if there's some other things that are modified. And I think that, Michael, that's one of the things that I read into this, that if there are further work is done, that there's a possibility that there are other ways to skin this cat.
If I may, that's possible, but without having the standards that Rebecca talked about they have certain requirements on where parking can be in relation to, in between buildings and the street, and how doorways are accessed, not being through parking. So there would probably be several components that would complicate the issue, that would make it difficult just to say the reduction in open space, we can't be sure that it would get them there without looking at a more detailed proposal. But that would be, I think, staff's comment, unless Mike has something else to add.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, just quickly, I think the applicant has made a variance request for parking, but there could be other variance requests that change the site so that they could achieve parking, but it would most likely be at the expense of one or more other requirements.
The only reason I asked that question is that in this particular location on this 12,700 square foot lot, the real utility of open space is sometimes not as important as a requirement as the parking in downtown might be. So there may be a trade-off there. That's my opinion, so.
Member Johnson, did you have any questions? Wanted to make sure we didn't leave you out.
I've been listening to you.
I also want to ask, you mentioned about working with the neighbors to the south about the easement. Where is that discussion at this point?
Just in discussion still.
Okay.
Sorry to go back to my previous question, but if I'm looking at this correctly, it's 10 bedrooms across the 7 units, and then with the variance, you're looking at 11 parking spaces for all those 10 bedrooms if we're assuming one person per room. Obviously, that's an assumption.
That sounds right.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the applicant? Thank you. And was there anyone else from the public that would like to comment? Looks like no one was signed up. Okay. Then we will move into the board discussion. So, board, are there additional comments that you would like to share with each other?
None from me.
I'll just jump in and say, I can see that there could be potential alternatives to overcome this, to alleviate the situation. Other configurations to accommodate the parking, perhaps. It is what's there, and it just needs to be accommodated. Some of the things that I heard about the prohibitive cost for grading the extra parking spot is, I think was the quote, it was prohibitive, too expensive to do that. Seems like those things could be overcome, or there'd be other ways to go about doing this in the same space to come up with the extra parking spot.
I have a couple of general comments, and I've kind of already stated these. Probably the big concern that I have, and I noticed that there are 1, 2, maybe 3 units that are the smaller units, 12 to 1,400 square foot units. and, you know, the price range was 400 to 700,000. I mean, these are not cheap units. That the issue in my mind is that downtown, I mean, this was a single-family home with an outbuilding, and a number of the other original, I'm going to call them more original buildings, were single-family detached homes. And I know that the existing zoning of 25 units to the acre in the CA zone allows for more density. But when I see the price range of units, $400,000 to $700,000, these are not cheap. People are going to be driving around in Mercedes and BMWs to be able to walk to the restaurants on Main Street. That I'm concerned that there are, as you mentioned, that there may be other alternatives to figure out how to add the additional parking space, because there's no parking downtown. If this occurs on every 12 to 15,000 square foot lot in the area over the next 10 years, you know, parking is going to be a major problem. And so that's my big concern.
Is there a motion from any of the board members?
You know, I'm torn between a motion to continue to a certain date or just to, with the uncertainty with the site development plan, some discussions with the neighbors, it seems that there's a lot of things that are still aren't quite ironed out or have been kind of addressed or alternatives sought. So it'd be my thinking to either continue this or maybe just to say I'd be certainly in favor of denying this proposal myself.
Well, if I could speak to that briefly. You know, I've spoken a lot tonight and visited the site and did some review. This is my last time. I will not be here anymore. I'm off this board as of tonight. So if it does come back, it's going to come back before a new group of people or the three of you and maybe some others. I think that there may be some solutions that could be obtained by further work with the public works staff and the planning staff on some modifications. And I understand that, you know, the density is 7 units allowed on this site based upon the zoning. And I understand the issue with having a single-family house with 5 other units is not allowed. So it's either a duplex and a 5-plex, or there are problems with this. So I could go either with continuing it for further discussion with the staff, or recommending a denial that says come up with another solution. So that's kind of where I am, and has some similarities to where you are.
Yep.
I haven't heard from the other two fellows. So.
And can I ask another question of staff? If we were to deny tonight and then the developer goes through additional review with the site development plan, is it possible to bring essentially the same variance request back if other alternatives are explored and this still looks like their preferred alternative?
Thank you, Chairman Primo. There is no code restriction on when they could bring a similar variance back. So I think that is possible, although they've, you know, there's a, I'll leave it at that.
Yep, thank you. So I guess speaking in terms of a potential motion, I mean, I am more towards denial. I see just kind of some concerns with the overall layout and, you know, how people are going to really manage in this space. And so I feel like there could be some significant challenges with the parking, not just for the people that live there, but just like you mentioned, Member Bagley, with any potential visitors, it would be challenging.
I'll make a motion I move denial of BOA resolution number 022019 concerning reduction in required off-street parking at 5609 South Curtis Street based on the following findings of fact. One, that the variance may not be the minimum that will afford relief and may not be the least possible modification to the off-street parking requirements of the Littleton City Code. Two, parking reductions may affect the welfare of the city. And three, that the hardship under which a variance is sought is created by the owner of the property.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Can I make a comment? I agree, and I understand that this is a thorny issue, and I would hope that the applicant and the staff would work together to come up with some other alternatives, other potential ways for the 7 units to have 12 spaces in the future. And I think that there are possibilities if that's searched adequately. So those are my comments.
Thank you. We'll vote.
All right, the vote is unanimous and the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And
Could I make a closing comment or two, Chair? Not about this, but just a general comment.
I believe first we have any potential comments from staff.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Chairman Primo. On behalf of the staff of the City of Littleton, I would like to thank Board Member Bagley, Chairman Primo, and Board Member McClintock for their service on the board. We appreciate your involvement in can be very difficult decisions at times, and we're appreciative of your service, and we'll miss you and wish you well in the future. Also, since former Chairman Martin resigned from the board, he was serving on a comprehensive plan committee, and I think probably as the board changes for the next meeting, we may need to discuss if we'd like to have a Board of Adjustment member on that comprehensive plan committee. And that may be that may be an item for Board Member Johnson and Board Member Madrid when he arrives to talk about at the next meeting. And hopefully there will be a member from the Board of Adjustment on that committee. Those were the only items I had.
Thank you.
Yeah, the comment that I was going to make is in driving around downtown today and seeing the development that's occurring and understanding the parking issues and understanding the zoning and the densities allowed, and it's not that they aren't appropriate, but because this is a car-oriented society and it's not going to change in the next year, we need to be really thoughtful about parking downtown and how that gets done. So that's a message for the Planning Department and Public Works. It really needs to be considered, and because I know we're doing the comp plan, maybe there are changes that need to occur with ordinances in this particular area that relate to parking. So, those are my comments. Thank you. Appreciate it. And so, 3 of us are leaving.
Yes.
Wow. So you don't really have a Board of Adjustment anymore. So you got 4 out of 7 that are gone.
We did have 2 members appointed
Oh,
by
you did?
council.
Okay.
So I still, there are some concerns about getting quorum, so I think we've asked, we're asking about that issue right now.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We will adjourn.